I'm Luke. I run the Debt and Benefit Advice Service for Service Needs. We see hundreds of people each year with a variety of debt issues. Often we deal with people who have priority type debts, so that they're debts that have serious consequences, such as rent arrears, council tax arrears, mortgage arrears. And our job is to assess someone's situation and help them find an outcome or a solution that will improve or better their situation. We have a lot of debt written off. It's around £1 million every year. A problem we're seeing that I was discussing with Sarah is that we're seeing an increase in deficit situations. So a deficit means there is more expenditure than income. So it's all well and good writing someone's debt off and assuming you're giving someone a fresh start. But the problem is if that person still doesn't have enough money to live on, they're not getting much of a fresh start. So that's a problem that we're seeing increasing. We're doing more work with financial skills and budgeting advice, but again, as we discussed, it's hard not to be patronising because the answer is not turning lights off or putting things off standby. That's not the answer to people's problems. It's not having enough money is a very difficult problem to solve. But we try our best to be there for people when they need us. We give as much support as possible because we appreciate that different people have different capabilities. And it's very important to get someone through our advice process. The worst thing that can happen is they disappear or disengage partway through, only to reappear months later and start again, or not appear at all again. So we spend a lot of time to look at people's limitations, issues, why they might not be able to or why they might struggle with our process, what more support they need, and we get a lot of people to an end point and improve their lives. So that's certainly something.
Has anybody got any particular question that they'd like to ask Luke now? Okay, we'll have a general discussion later. Shall we move on then? Graham, who are you?
Who am I? So my name is Graham Brownlee. I am currently the lead organiser for West Yorkshire Citizens, covering Leeds, Bradford, Kirklees, Calderdale and Wakefield. But I got into this years and years ago in Teesside as a church leader, working alongside a local priest. And we welcome people from the community to come and share what their lives were like, and we put on a tea and coffee. We had a crisis because the level of anger and the level of frustration and desperation beat us. We felt overwhelmed. And if I were to summarise it, at that moment it changed my direction in life because the priest herself and the local head teacher said, compassion is not enough, and charity will never do it. And it's reminded me of that today, that justice needs to come alongside those two C words. So in West Yorkshire we've had a chapter of citizens like Tyler Weir around for just over 10 years. And John and I are among other leaders in the about 2013, 14, 15. We're busy setting things up here in the city of Leeds. We now have over 40 members. The diocese here is a member of West Yorkshire Citizens, which is an amazing thing, alongside 6 school trusts, but no Catholic school trusts yet, alongside 2 student unions, 2 universities, arts groups, mosques, all together with what we've been talking about today. The campaigns we have at the moment, which is getting our people out to move beyond that compassion and that charity, is public transport's a big thing for us. You may have heard, if you come from this region, that our mayor is going to, I say take over the buses, that's a shorthand way of describing it, but the buses will be accountable to the public in about a year's time. That decision has been made, and we want that to mean that they'll be affordable, they'll be accessible for students and migrants in both ways of money and timetable, and also reliable, and we want the people to have a say. We're also campaigning on racial justice in education, and we've got some fantastic young people wanting to influence the curriculum in schools and recruitment in schools. We have campaigns for living wage care workers, fitting in with this. So if anything, if you come out with anything around today, we'd love you to be on our case, and we'd love to meet up and take it further. We also are campaigning strongly for migrants of better ways of being welcomed as citizens in our community. That's a snapshot of what we're involved in. Alongside that, we've got an ambition, because if you get into Yorkshire, everyone bangs you over the head with the white rose, being for any length of time, to grow chapters similar to this in Hull and Sheffield and possibly York, which means that the dioceses of Middlesbrough and Hallam can join the party fully and make it part of the sponsoring and founding of those. So that's what I'm part of with a number of leaders of this region.
In particular question to go at this point? I just want to add in one thing. Justice and Peace, some years ago, Joe, if you remember, and it's echoing what Sarah was asking. We organised a conference in Oxford Place, which was the centre, the Methodist Centre. Very early on, some 11 years ago, it was called Food Banks. Are they charity or injustice? It was deliberately provocative, but where are we now? Where are we now? So, Tom, you've been a young man, but you've been around a while. But would you like to say a little bit? Would you like to say a little bit about engagement campaigning and why we're not on our own if we want to change the world?
Yeah, so I'm Tom, but I'm a member of this parish called, I go to the other church at the other end, Holy Rosary. I used to work at Citizens UK when it was just starting in Leeds, and before that I worked in London. At the moment, I'm Vice Chair of Governors at the parish primary school, which my daughter attends. And this conference is important, I think, for me in that role, because poverty and financial hardship is probably the biggest thing that gets in the way of us achieving our mission of making Christ known and allowing all young people in our community to reach their unique God-given potential. And that comes out in lots and lots of different ways. And lots of people will be familiar with the fact that, you know, lots of young people receive free school meals because of the low income of their families, and you know, we provide a breakfast club. But there are also other sort of more subtle and insidious ways in which poverty acts as a drain or a drag on everybody. It really is a burden on families in terms of the time that parents can spend with their children, and the ability of those parents to participate in school activities, to support the additional learning that we want to take place at home, to have the headspace to respond to all the stuff that school wants them to respond to as well. It affects their access to sort of special educational needs, provision and assessments and things like that. So this thing really has a very insidious effect that undermines what we are here to do to support young people in our parish. As a school, we try our best. We have a food bank and a food pantry with support from Catholic Care. We have an active SVP group in our parish. We have all sorts of ways in which the staff kind of go above and beyond. We have the parish and the diocese sharing the cost of lots of the kind of enrichment and extracurricular activities so that it can be as cheap as possible for families. And this is all really, really, really good stuff. However, you know, we're talking about opening doors to a real living wage. That stuff only gets us so far. And what we really need is, as Graham said, is justice. And we need people to have the ability to earn enough to support their families and to have the dignity that comes alongside that to enable us to do all the other things that we want to do as a school and to allow those young people to flourish. In my time at Citizens and in the work that I've done with sort of young people and students, it's been really exciting to see people taking positive action to try and get this to happen and moving beyond kind of direct service provision and charity to do that, and sometimes even challenging institutions in quite fun and creative ways. And you'll have heard earlier about the success of the living wage movement and the huge number of organisations that voluntarily go above and beyond what the government is putting as its minimum wage. That only happens because people have kind of stepped into public life and been willing to do creative action to take that step to challenge the things around them to provide more money. And I think the theme this year is opening doors. We often think about opening doors in terms of we're opening a door to let people in, to be more welcoming, which is true. But maybe as Catholics we should think about opening doors in a different way, like the door that we're going to walk through to change and be different in order to fulfill our mission. And I wonder whether one of the doors that we can walk through this student year is a door into kind of politics, for want of a better word. A door into like active and sophisticated pursuits of justice, which maybe is a bit more challenging or something that we're less used to or we have less experience of than direct service provision and charity and the things that we do to ameliorate the situation that we're in. And I wonder if this year can be a year where we embrace that challenge, because if we stick with the same stuff, it's not going to get us the justice.
Again, anything immediately, please.
Can I ask you, your SVP group, do they have any input with the school or with the church? Because they visit families and they visit old people as well. And we all know that some of the elderly people are too proud to go to the people. And I just wondered if the SVP, because you say it's so big, if they have the input to take stuff to the elderly people as well as families.
The short answer is yes. They're very active, and actually last month we had an assembly at school. So this is a primary school, an assembly which was run by the SVP, and there's a group called Mini Vinnies which is operating in the school to kind of embed the values and practices of the SVP amongst people. So yes, so it's very active in the parish, and there are lots of ways that people can get connected to the SVP.
And one of the things we're trying to do is that CPC is quite strong still in the parishes, and it's been said that when there's the visiting that my father used to do, it's like a secret society. When my dad went out to visit an elderly couple on a Friday night, and my mum thought I was going to the pub for 15 years, but it was actually visiting the family. And it was a secret society, but now because of poverty, a lot more through the schools is collecting food and clothing, rehousing people who get evicted. That is it in our SVP in the city is every week with references. So and maybe we draw the SVP and just increase the other organisations a bit closer together and get more synergy from joining up with them. Tom, thank you. Paul is at the Leeds Church Institute, an ecumenical institute that really is amazingly creative and imaginative, and has done a lot of work on justice, care for the environment, and where's the Paul? You speak for yourself.
Well, you've just nicked my opening line. Sorry, you know that. So, Leeds Church Institute is an ecumenical charity. It's been around in Leeds since at least 1856, so it's not the new kid on the block. But I would often describe it as perhaps one of Leeds' best kept secret. I've lived in Leeds for 12 years and only really knew about it when I started working for them. One of the main aims is about improving theological education and theological literacy in the city. As I like to put it, it's often about actually how do you bridge the gap between the academic theology, which is often really well written, really well researched, and so far in advance of where most people in churches are, that actually there's all this brilliant stuff that no one ever finds out about. So actually there's a big part of that, how do we bridge this, almost, it feels like a massive divide between those two areas. My particular role is as Faith at the Margins lead, which I will often joke means I cover everything that everyone else isn't doing. The main areas for me are working around marginalisation due to poverty, so social and economic poverty, marginalisation due to disability, and marginalisation due to sexuality. One of the big things I've discovered in the last couple of years is actually trying to separate out these areas of marginalisation doesn't work. There is so much interconnectedness between them that you can't talk about one almost without talking about the other. I have another colleague who focuses specifically on issues of racial justice and looks especially as well at immigration and asylum. And again, what we've discovered is you can't talk about racial justice or immigration without talking about poverty, and often without talking about disability as well. The overlaps are just so huge, it's impossible. So I've spent most of the last couple of years going around places in Leeds and listening to stories. I have the great pleasure of being on the leadership team for Leeds Citizens, or West Yorkshire Citizens now. I keep making that mistake. And starting to figure out actually how does this fit in with what we see on the ground in churches. I've had a lot of discussions visiting food banks, or if you've heard of it in Leeds, the Rainbow Junction Cafe at All Hallows in Hyde Park, where they've done some absolutely amazing work providing food and support for people. But last year, they had a situation where they had to close their Friday food share, which was massively successful. It started up during COVID. They were feeding thousands and thousands of people every week. But they had to stop because they could not keep up with the ever-increasing demand. That led to a bunch of conversations that we've been having, which looked at, it's now developed into what is my scheme of work for at least the next year, which has the title of Profit or Provider. And this is going to sound very familiar to a lot of people now, because it's exploring that tension for churches between actually meeting the needs of people experiencing poverty or discrimination in any way, but also being that prophetic voice for change for actually holding your local council or the government or your employer or whoever it is to account to actually make sure that people are not slipping into poverty. Citizens for me is one of the best ways we have of doing this. But a lot of churches I've spoken to over the last year have said, oh, we'd really love to be involved with citizens, but we're so busy feeding people. We're so engaged with this work that we don't have the capacity to get involved with citizens and get involved with community organising. So what I'm starting to look at now is how this actually ties in, because churches are discovering you can't keep up with the need for food banks. You can't keep up with this ever-increasing need that's being put on, and the churches are being often the ones who are called to step into the gap and go. So what you've actually got to do is to get in there and find out what's going on to stop the root causes of poverty. So next October we have John Kurt coming up from London. He's the CEO of Open to Action, which works around homelessness. And he's been doing a lot of work on this question of how do we stop people falling into poverty, falling into homelessness, and actually tackle the root causes so that this doesn't become an issue in the first place. I think that's enough for me for now.
Oh, thank you. Pope Francis told people like me to do not go around referring to young people are the hope of the future. He said, no, young people are the now. Young people are the now. So I just want to say to you, thank you for agreeing at short notice, like 10 minutes before this session, to agree to be on a panel without any notice of preparation. Fantastic. But I'd just like to ask you really, you've been involved at Trinity, say perhaps a bit about, and maybe say things about Spark Justice. I mean, what do you think of the show so far?
I'd like to say thank you to Sister Anne for it at lunchtime. That was great. I've got a few different notes I've brought down about this actually. So for me, I am quite big on poverty and destitution. I got to recently speak to Piers Morgan on poverty and destitution within the UK, and what we can do as individuals to do our bit as well to help out within the local area. And I also spoke to Andrew Brunel, if anybody's heard of him. But the thing is, I always get in contact with people, and just afterwards I find I can't really do anything actionable from those contacts, because the people I get in contact with, there's just nothing to go ahead with, so it is quite hard in a way, because lots of people don't listen to you. And from my background as well, I'm from Sunderland, both my parents both work like 2 jobs each just to keep the food on the table and stuff. Yeah, it was really difficult in that way. It was good to also hear as well about the green of the energy wastage and how that can be used in the homes. I have worked with Spark as well, with Rainbow Junction, on poverty projects within the city, and what living wages versus the minimum wage, because I didn't really know the difference between them, so it's good to hear about that. And we might be divided on the football, but I think we are like together on a common cause, which is poverty, so that is good. Also, how we can use this. The local diocese, I don't really attend churches, so it's great to hear like what we can do and how I can be involved in the community through the churches, and also asking if it is accredited, and getting in touch with local councillors, you know, about pensions and stuff, and viewing numbers on the GRF report. I had one that I discussed on social media. As a young person, I'll find it. I've got the statistics on it here, which I thought was absolutely disgusting. Social media always goes up I'll let go. So this is a quote that really touched us deeply because I thought it's just disgusting. So it said, we see from our latest destitution in the UK report that around 1 million children are living in poverty. These figures have more than doubled since 2017, and that's absolutely atrocious. And I think that people are more than statistics, so we should see people as people and not another number. And yeah, I am really passionate about that. So.
Thank you. Would any of you like to comment on anything anybody else has said? Are you a team? Are you got a team?
I think people being more than statistics is very true, and every single one of those million people, million children, there's a whole family there, and it's quite deep than just statistics, isn't it? So.
I think when you said there about what's atrocious there and going to Trinity University but not going to church, I would say to those in churches, as well as this being a really important thing to do for justice around the real living wage, it actually is in the self-interest of church because it gets you out there, as Tom said, getting out the door, and when there is media that says different things about church, this is a great way of saying this is what we're about in a much more positive way. So it appeals to both our altruism and our self-interest and say now's the time to get stuck in. It will make a practical difference when we come to our lives.
Sarah, would you like to say, are we doing all right down here, or are we not keeping up with Newcastle? What's
Regional.
I think we all learn from each other all the time. Like, this is why I love coming to things like this, because we all have stories that we can share. And I think the main thing is that, like, if things are so hard, you can just feel so overwhelmed and powerless to act. But once you start coming together, like, asking, is this a team, is a really good question, because, like, are we all working together? We all want the same thing, but are we all working together? Or are we too busy trying to do the massive long list that we need to do that all of us have? Like, we have to ask ourselves how we're spending our time and is it effective? And do we need to do something else? So I love that idea of walking through the door into taking action. And it's a scary step to take because it's quite comfortable having a meeting and having to talk about it, but going out and doing something, like even if it's dressing up as Santa Claus outside the university, is a bit scary, but it is very joyful and it doesn't need to be a scary thing. It can have humour, it can be fun. We really love getting dressed up in the northeast, I will say that. We'll always have a song, we'll always have an outfit. So I think things are definitely going well here, and where can we then do something as a northern region? So like our mayors meet as northern mayors. What about all of us meeting across the north, the northeast, the northwest, and really trying to influence that group of mayors as the convention of the north in February? Like, I think our connections between each other are really powerful. We can't underestimate it, and there's a lot we can do to make things better. And yeah, it's really encouraging and exciting to hear all the great work that is already happening.
Please, Frank.
No, I'm interested in what Sarah was saying and what's been said at the top. I watched the children meet last night. I don't know if anybody saw it.
Yes.
And it's very impressive. I mean, they go to a lot of trouble to entertain, and they bring everybody in, all characters we know. They even have set up shows. It's done very well. Paddy McGuinness cycles from one end of the country to the other, and he raises 7 million pounds, and it's very heartwarming. And in the back of your mind, you're saying, this is really good. No, this is good. This is great. And then you're kind of saying, well, has anybody said, really, we shouldn't be doing this because this should be here? And it's really entertaining. And then I was thinking about it, and what really struck me was, I remember seeing an interview with Alex Ferguson, and he was asked about, somebody inspirational in his life. And we all thought you were going to talk about some magic football, this, that, and the other. And he mentioned Marcus Rashford. And he kind of goes, and the man said, yeah, but he didn't score, he's not old, he didn't score as many goals. And he said, that's not the point. He said, the point is, during COVID, he told his story, which is what you mentioned this morning. He said children don't go to school, and it's wrong that they have to go to school to get fed in the first place. But now the schools are closed, they're not being fed. So the government needs to step up. So the £20 uplift isn't enough, we need to feed them. And using his profile and his story, a bit like Children Lead, he embarrassed the government into making sure that the children were fed during the first lockdown. So he took it as a given that when the lockdown happened second time, that the children would be fed a second time. But that, he took a no. And he said, okay, the children are hungry, they're hungry. And again, for the second time, he embarrassed. And you kind of come away thinking, what will it take? They said they were wrong twice, they corrected it twice, but they would do it again and wait for somebody like Marcus Rashford or Children in Need or whatever. But what struck my Children in Need was there was a coming together of lots of people last night, and there was, I can't quite put my finger on it. Like, there's something very good and very heartwarming about it, but there's also that itch that says, I don't know why I'm enjoying this. This is something not quite right with this. And I think it's in the power of networking, like all of you together and articulating. Like somebody mentioned, I think it was Tom who mentioned, the ability of the church to respond is so limited because the needs are outstripping by a large margin the ability to actually respond. So we need to combine efforts and gather or collate our respective stories to be able to think our way better, to be able to speak to our thinking our way better. I don't know whether that made any sense at all.
Yes.
But it was just when I kind of listened to the Children Lead and all that last night, which is kind of very hard. What they're doing now during the week is they'll keep this going and they'll have a little snapshot of the highlights of it, and you can still give your 5-year time. And it's the same with Standard of Cancer on Channel 4. I mean, it's fabulous, but the whole idea is you're watching something for an hour, and I mean, you give them your hearts afterwards because they have you in office stage. They do it so well, they make you feel so badly. But it's almost like it's my fault it's that bad, and it's not. But it's, I don't know. I won't ask you to discuss that, it just something that came up. I don't know whether it makes sense.
There's that well-known sense that others have used it, but was it Desmond Tutu about what was in the river? Why I'm dragging about? Can we get upstream and find out why we're going in the first place? And that's so hard to do. But other voices, so anybody else with a comment? George, you had some ideas. Do you want to share your ideas? Joe Curtis, yeah.
We're very concerned that this legacy is not a living village accredited agency, so to speak. And we did have some discussion with the then CEO of this decided that to do. I'm afraid my memory doesn't serve me right. It didn't really go anywhere, but I wasn't sure why it didn't go anywhere. So today it's really prompted me to revisit. So I'm naming them in the school so that when they receive my email, they don't think that it's been named for them. So,
Joe, excuse me, could you stand up so your voice carries over the room, because people here can't quite hear you.
so Tom, John, and Simon. Right, so we're trying to get together, and because of the other discussion I had with Tom regarding to schools as to whether they are allowed, whatever it is, to actually be as individual agency being linked to the. Now, in this diocese, most of the schools are within an educational trust. Not all schools are, but the majority of them are. However, I think this is also equally another opportunity for us, another door to be knocking on, because come 2 years from now, whatever, the aspiration is to consolidate those 5 trusts into 2 trusts. So it's another door. But I mean, the other observation I make is this point that these things should not happen, and I fully support that. But at the same time, it actually gives us an opportunity of living out our faith. Yeah, so I think it's that balance, I think, because if everything was done on a plate, me as an individual never declared to be faithful, or perhaps this idea of actually looking at the need of somebody else would not be on our agenda. So it's just to keep that balance. At the moment, it's very much balanced towards the action taken by an individual. Yeah? Okay, just leave that as a thought. Is that what you were expecting, or really?
Yes, that's fine.
I'm saying something else.
Fine.
I just would like to encourage you. You asked quite a perceptive question, are we a team? There is nothing stopping the 5 of us here working together next week, because we're all in the same city. So you've called us out, John. We all have an LS postcode. You lot maybe are out off the hook there, but we aren't. And I think it's actually to organise together is the answer, Brian, to what you're saying. Children need organise in a certain way, and it's the power of big organisations and media and celebrity. But when we organise, we can actually encourage one another. Even if that's micro, if we did something up and down York Road or something, that would give us a buzz. And the thing that encourages is not going to meetings or conferences. It's actually seeing something changed. Because then you come back and say, do you know, that's happened. And I think I would cling on to that from what you said, John. If we were a team, you may have a team where you are in your parish or your SVP group or in your primary school, and you take it there. We have, it's outside church. We have a big buses campaign, which is almost becoming obsessive in West Yorkshire. We dream about buses. We have panic attacks about buses. It began in one school, where they said in that school, the number 7 bus arrives 2 minutes after the end of the day. That's crazy. Could we move the timetable by only 10 minutes? And then alongside that, they said, can we get our school bus cheaper? And that created a ripple effect of buses. There was one little pocket park in South Leeds where they had £5,000 to improve the slides and everything. And we got the local council to spend £10 times that much, 50,000, because one of the councillors wanted to get re-elected. As a result, when we went to the next neighbourhood, they said, we've heard about the park, and we ain't done it. And it's the ripple effect of all of that. So I said, even if it's micro in your parish, I'm sure it can work, and you've called us out, John.
Other comments? Have you?
I just make a comment about things you mentioned, the mini villies. The trips that I go to in Sheffield, I was talking to a couple of the SVP members who've been doing the same thing for years and years and years, and now they're saying we need to look at things differently because we're older and the need might be different. And we have a sort of dementia-friendly lunch on Friday, and then there are a lot of people that can't be brought to that, or we have a voluntary bus service to it. But we were talking about, not always to do with poverty, it's about isolation and depression for older people, and not so older people who are living alone. But one of the things that's sort of like a little spark, the school has started the mini-minis, and actually that's spilling over into the parish, because the mini-minis did a little talk about they wanted people to knit flowers for a display for the day centre, and when they have their open day in the summer. So then that moved on to, right, well, we'll get people together on a Sunday afternoon and bring loads of wool and get people, and these kids were showing people how to knit. And I was so proud. I knitted a flower in an afternoon, and I got a photograph to prove that I knitted a flower in an afternoon. The point was, then they decided, why don't we bring some people who come to the Friday lunchtime to that hour? And it turned out to be the most brilliant afternoon. And we gave some of the people who have dementia and Alzheimer's knitting needles, and they were remembering how they used to knit when they were younger. And it turned out to be a fantastic occasion, so we're hoping to repeat it. But it's saying, and now the mini children are making cakes for selling after Mass and stuff like that. So you can bring people together in unexpected ways. And it just came about just by chance. You know, could we not get people to knit flowers for this display at the day centre? And it's grown into something, a real collaboration, and it's given the kids some credibility and a position where they can say, yes, well, we're the mini-minis, and we can do this in church, and we can do that in church, and we can share this, and it's been a fantastic experience. It's really good. So that's where things, they set off for a reason, but then they take on a life of their own, don't they, if you just go with it. So that was just one example.
Our church, they knit ducks and they put cream egg in them. And then at Christmas they knit Christmas puddings and put frog and mushroom in them.
All right. I come to your church then.
Any other comments, please?
One of the big things is the value of networking. People talking, passing information. You know, just let people know what's going on, because there is some marvellous work being done, but we don't hear about it.
Would you like to say who you are and where you work? I know.
Just David Archibald, involved with the Hexham Castle Justice and Peace, the shared refugee project, which again has been over 20 years. Just the fact that we consistent work being there. We on the project, we help find people who I reckon the value of what the food we probably give out is about getting close to £100,000 a year in terms of donations, what people have done. And the big thing, but being there consistently has an impact, have a network of people. It actually, because we have a good set of volunteers, it meant that actually often people approach us, that if the council want to get in touch with, for example, refugees, that they will often approach our organisation just to offer support. We have some of the colleges approaching us thinking, well, we've got these courses, perhaps some of the refugees might be interested, but the good thing is that people get a lead from me, they were told us to how grateful we are to get the support, but also we're doing something now. It has made a big impact on a lot of people's lives. It's a big thing that it's been done. It's just been that level of consistent work, but also talk to people don't know it's a hope that people can come.
Sam.
Thank you. So one thing that's come across really clearly from a lot of what's been said is the really ambiguous nature of charity. Right? So charity on the one hand provides for people when they need it most, on the other hand functions as a sticking plaster that can kind of distract from the need for justice. I feel this is a really big problem in churches, that we see our role as being to provide charity first and foremost. I just wonder if anyone's got any thoughts on how we can collectively move beyond that, what kind of strategies we can employ to shift our focus to more of a justice-focused way of thinking.
Tom?
So one thing that just springs to mind is thinking about hospitals. And there's just lots in it where basically when people are bold enough to ask for the real thing that they need, God from Jesus, they get it and they're rewarded. But it requires like some boldness, some audacity. So there's the guy who can't walk, and he's trying to meet Jesus, and Jesus is stuck in some house, and there's too many people there, so he literally can't get to the door of the house. And what ends up happening? His friends lift him to the top of the house, and they break through the roof and lower him down to get to Jesus, right? And there's something in that about how actually, in that moment, what was required wasn't standing outside and waiting and hoping that Jesus would come past, but an act of bravery, or whether it's grabbing Jesus' cloak, or if you're Bartimaeus screaming out the side of the road for Jesus' attention, and everyone's telling you to shut up. There's all these examples where I think the message of being told is some audacity and some bravery and some direct asking for the root of the problems we solve is what's required, and that will be rewarded for that. So I think part of the response is to help, for us to read that again and take that in and see how that sort of thing applies to what's around us, because I really feel that ambiguity, and I feel like sometimes the work we do for charity is avoiding the tension and the more direct asking, the more direct action that we need to get justice.
So I'm probably going to be very similar. In my other life, I'm a local preacher in the Methodist Church, and I've just started training as a presbyter because I've clearly lost all sense of self-preservation. One of the things that you often get challenged on is being political when you preach. And I remember very distinctly at one point being told, you're not supposed to be political when you preach. To which my response is very much as Tom said, have you read the Gospels? Because actually one of the most disruptive pieces of scripture is the Sermon on the Mount. There is absolutely nothing about Jesus' entire life and ministry that wasn't disruptive of the status quo. It wasn't just being nice. The meek and mild Jesus, as far as I can tell, is a Victorian invention for carols. And it's not one that I've ever seen borne out within any of those scriptures. But yet that seems to be the image that we often have in churches. Last 2 weeks ago, I was at a conference in Birmingham on identity in the church. It was about racial justice and racial identity. But one of the big things we came out with, was all of the interconnectedness that I mentioned earlier on. But one of them was, this was specifically talking about the Church of England, that when I've looked, it fits across churches anyway, that we have a white British middle classness about the church, which means that we're very polite to each other, we don't disrupt things, we don't upset people, we have to have something nice to say all the time. And yet, I've personally been challenged when someone said, well, you didn't give us a message of good news in that service. And sort of go, no, I told you to go out and change something. And maybe that's what we need more of in church. But yes, there is good news that we can go out and change it, but we do actually need to go out. We need to be willing to turn over the tables, I'm not going to say just open the church doors, but maybe kick them open, blow them off their hinges possibly, because maybe the gentle approach doesn't quite work.
How do we stop our churches being introverted? I mean, I find parish churches, certainly the Anglican church, can be so inward-looking. They become like clubs. We all say, oh, the church isn't a club, but they jolly well are so. And I think that's something we've really got to change.
So I found participation in Citizens UK really helpful with that, because so on a practical level, it gave churches and other organisations a really quite simple methodology for how you can do stuff of value in your local community, but in a way which is very much sort of an expression of your faith as well. So really basic things like training in how to have one-to-one meetings or how to do community actions, that allows you to kind of take baby steps to do an action which is close enough to your experience that is not going to be too shocking or too controversial, but actually gives you the confidence to try and ask for more. I found that having that framework and the training and support that's provided by citizens really helpful. And when that's combined with kind of preaching and reading that's, personally, it gives me a lot of hope and energy to go and do so. And so I think you need the kind of practical support as well as the kind of theological stuff.
So,
I mean, my experience of working with churches is that you're doing a lot, and the church will be really run ragged, and people feel like they're going to be burnt out trying to respond to everything. And one of the practical activities that we found helpful is getting a piece of flip chart, sitting with a group of people that are very active in the church doing all kinds of things and saying, let's list out what we're doing. And we've had a slide on evangelism. What are you doing that's evangelistic? What are you doing that is charitable? And you'll usually find a massive long list of things on there. People are running this, and this, and this. And then what are you doing that's justice? And there'll be the tumbleweed moment. And I think it's getting people to realise, because people are feeling like, I'm overstretched, I'm doing so much, how can I add this into it? That it's actually getting people to think about and have a conversation about what are we doing and where our energy is concentrated, and what are the things that we're doing on that middle one that's really massive and long, that is no longer effective, that we could maybe stop or halt to create a bit of space to do something in the justice thing. And it's not saying we need to radically stop doing everything we're doing and do something else. I think that would be too much for people. But it's to say a little bit of an adjustment out of this middle space into that space, I think helps people visualise it, but also not feel overwhelmed, like you're just asking me to do another thing and I'm already feeling like I'm running low on energy. And I think that's just a practical exercise that we could do. And we have to be honest that we spend an enormous amount, not just as churches and civil society, but our local authorities, our schools, all of our institutions spend an enormous amount of time and energy trying to tackle this issue of poverty. There will be endless conferences, endless reports, endless discussions, and we're not really getting very far. And then during Living Wage Week, a couple of weeks ago, the leader of Newcastle City Council, I thought, summed it up the best I've heard it for a while, where she said, this is not easy. She said it was not easy to become a living wage council, and the elephant in the room was the social care workforce, but it's a lot easier than dealing with the poverty in our city. And I think that's the discussions that we need to be having in all of our institutions, be it schools or churches. This is not easy. This is not an easy discussion. This work is not straightforward. But let's look at what we're doing and how a small adjustment might lead us to a different space. And I guarantee you'll not take everyone with you, but you will find a group of people with energy for that, willing to give and go. And the minute you start winning things, it gets a life of its own.
I was on conferences where we can speak with people working in care homes who have been pressing for decent wages. They need to fund them. What was really interesting, and they were winning the churches across a whole range of churches of religious orders, and in the conversation they said, do you know, we're all being advised at Mass now to be campaigning, and rightly, on assisted dying, one of them said. And the reason we're going to be discussing that, and the media is so good on it, it's going to run till Christmas, and if you get a bill, it will go for a whole year. It will be a great distraction for the government to stop them dealing with the crisis in social care. Once again, distraction politics. And I think that I really liked what you said, Sarah, about we can't wait. You know, the government gets elected, let's not say wherever, and then there is a kind of moment when the people expect change will come quickly. It doesn't, a disappointment. But then you're going to keep waiting for the government. And you were saying we cannot wait for the government to change things. We have to build it up from the base. And I think that applies to the way that we look at challenging structures of justice as well. But Graham, you wanted to have a word. And then, we're not from you, we're going to come on, unless you pitch it out.
Do we go first? No.
All
right. I think the question has sparked something here. I think I would say that for what Sarah said in the conversation, this is a great opportunity for us. There are always reasons not to do this, but usually those reasons are a distraction. If you go to a business or a council, the reason why they do this, we can't do it. Well, there'll never be a time when the budget's got loads spent. You just got to go for it. The distraction for churches might be we're busy. And the next bet coming out of the pandemic in the churches in this city, or whatever denomination it was, we've got more busy in the pandemic. Amy is probably going to go back a bit. There'll never be a comfortable time to do this. But the power of it is the story. Once we allow these stories to flow, let the story take us where we need to be. Because that creates momentum. Because the other inertia is that the same old people are saying the same old thing. So we need to get away from just the well-known people saying wordy things and writing wordy prayers. They are great, but it's the grassroots, it's the community voice that will change. And Joe, if you're going to the bishop or to others in the diocese here, what will strengthen your voice is not your argument, good though it is, it's the momentum that might come out from other people in schools. The last one I'd say about inertia is that the fear of being political in the charity world. Well, we are a charity church, so we shouldn't be. And that's the advantage of having an organised alliance of organisations. So you're not speaking as one, you're speaking as all. I've had some schools or students' unions or churches say, we don't want to do it because we don't want to be seen to be, but we'll do it if we're part of a team that's saying that together.
Oh yeah, sure. So I think from a young people's point of view, it's like I'm always happy to help out wherever it needs help, and if I'm working together with someone, I think it's easier to do that because then I've got older people like yourselves who have the expertise and the knowledge, and it's like applying that as well, especially on social media, because lots of young people use social media, and it's like if there's lots of diverse strategies from politics and stuff, it's like there's nowhere for like young people to look at or have a good direction, or it's not very clear on what young people should be doing.
Any other comments or questions?
I think I might have one that's related. Earlier, to be honest, almost the most important thing for me that was said was about people not being statistics. Because we do get lost in numbers. There's 900,000 people in Leeds in poverty at the moment, or 900,000 people in Leeds approximately, I think, on benefits at the moment. 40% of those are actually working in either full-time or part-time. I can't really envisage those numbers. I know individuals who are in that situation. But that's kind of what you need to do. You need to know the individuals. You actually need to get to know them. You need to build relationships. The citizens methodology we've been talking about is very much based around one-to-one conversations, actually talking to people, but not talking at them, listening to them, listening to those stories and experiences, and often giving them the encouragement to go, actually, I have a voice, I have something to say on this. I don't need you, Mr. Paul, white middle-class guy, to come and say it for me. I can say it for myself, and I can say it for myself alongside all of these other people who have shared experiences of this. Of course, the trouble is that this takes time. And taking time is something we don't like. We like instant results. I'm one of those people, I get frustrated if my phone doesn't load something instantly. I expect things to happen very, very quickly. And we do that. We expect it politically, we expect it in churches as well. We talk about church growth all the time. If you go to any conference, it's the number one topic. How do we get more people back into our churches? Actually, for me, that's exactly the same thing. You gather around that shared experience, you build those relationships up with people, you get to know them as individuals, and you get to see that actually there is so much that we have in common, so much shared interest that we have, that maybe they're sitting there going, actually, that lot down the road in the church building aren't that weird. They are just like me. They have the same fears, the same concerns, the same interest in what's going on in society. And one place where I've been involved running a repair cafe in East Leeds. What started off as a bunch of volunteers who were coming together over, actually, we want to save the planet, we want to save a lot of poor people in our community from having to throw away that broken toaster and buy a new one. First year we ran it, the biggest thing that we repaired was toasters. Because it's a really simple fix if you know how, but it's 10 to 15 quid if you don't know how. But that was the biggest thing. But a lot of those people who came in and had their toasters fixed kept coming back. A lot of the volunteers who were there because they cared about fixing things and saving the planet and wanted to share their skills stayed involved with things that the church was doing in other areas because they were going, this lot aren't that weird. There's so much about all we care about that's in common. Maybe we'll all come along to that coffee morning or to that tabletop sale that we're doing. We'll find out what else is going on. So it's actually, we tend to look at social justice and evangelism as two separate things. They're not. That is the point at which you start developing that relationship and connecting with people.
I'm just going to ask that because I think the way that citizens work is just really good, and I think the church has a lot to learn from the methodologies and all that. I think it must have been during COVID, but I was online with a lot of training that citizens offered. I was just wondering if they still do all those, because it was like a weekly thing. I mean, it was just great. I got a bit carried away at one point and then I'm back.
Yeah, I mean, the methodology is like, it comes from Catholic social teaching and it comes from, it isn't just something that we can claim we invented. But there is still a lot of training online, that less than there was during COVID, but there's also like in-person one, which if you can make it, I would encourage you to do. It's a million times better than the online one. If you go on the Citizens UK website, there's a training page, and you'll have links there to the national training programme. But depending on where you are in the country, there'll be a local alliance, like there is in time here, West Yorkshire, Liverpool, wherever you are, and there's a drop-down menu of, they're called local chapters, like in American jargon. You can find where's your nearest one, and I'm sure they would welcome you into training locally too. They do 2 days, 3 days online, 6 days residential, so there's a huge wide variety of things. And the Catholic community across the country are organising themselves very effectively. There's some work that they're doing at the minute with who's it with, the Cardinal?
Yes, in London.
Yeah, yeah. So there's school-based training for Catholic schools. There's all kinds of things going on that we've been plug into. Yeah, either through your chapter or finding information on it.
We just had 2-day training in West Yorkshire at Leeds University this week. Yeah. So the university.
Sometimes it's interesting. The citizens did an online workshop on the Pope's letter, Fratelli Tutti, which and it got. I mean, it got more coverage outside the Catholic Church than within it. And sometimes it's a way of having conversations around where we're going and help us all. Please.
I think that's what you're saying. I think is what is the power of citizens. That it's not just confined. It doesn't work with just one particular group. To say, well, it's a great model for the Catholic Church to take up. It wouldn't work. That's not it. It's the fact that it's open for any group and that it's already more and more come together. That's its power. And I'm so happy today because it was years ago, not sure how many years ago, I first kind of met citizens. I've been around a bit, I was a Catholic since my dad, and sent to different places. And I seem to kind of just got on the edge of it in different places, like in London, in Cardiff. And then coming here and hearing how many places it's in. And it's actually going to be launched, and I haven't heard it happening in Liverpool. I've been there 3 years, so I can't miss out. And I just think that's marvellous. And I just thought that would keep on happening. You know, that more and more of the Catholic churches and dioceses and more of the mosques and synods and gurdwaras will come in on it. Because that's kind of power that will change this country, not the politics. You know, it's this real people power, isn't it? This might seem a minor thing, but it's about language. In the past, when people have been talking in church, you know, and I'm talking about the Catholic Church, they seem frightened to talk about love. They talk about charity, meaning love, instead of just saying love. They don't have a thing about love, I think, sometimes in the Catholic Church. But then the people who have not sort of recognised this nuance of language is, oh, charity, oh, that's okay. Well, it's Catholic Family Fast Day, so we'll fill this envelope and then we'll fill that envelope and we've done our charity. Whereas, I mean, Pope Francis does it as well. He talks about charity when he should be talking about love. And I think there's people receive language in different ways, don't they? And I think that's sort of been a hurdle. Well, many people feel too comfortable, I think. We've done the charity, so that's okay. We might not have done the love bit, but charity to us has been love. That's something. So I think that's just a minor thing of language, which we're not always careful about the language we use. We assume that people know what we're talking about. You know, I think just a minor point to note. I think it's important.
There was once a group of people in the university colleges, and there was theology and philosophy department to invite people for a general talk. And one young person had turned up and said, I don't do theology, I'm studying the English language because I need to understand it better. And then the person said, and we must understand that God is not about the ego, narcissistic I, the first person. God is not about you, you're to blame, the second person. I think God is simply the first person plural, we. And bringing together we, the whole group. Now, I just think, and sometimes when, what was it, Paul Benedict said, poverty, don't forget that poverty is isolation. And in our society, it's not only the old that are isolated, it's also the young. And that does give us some kind of, any networking that we do is valuable, isn't it? Any more? Oh, please, yes.
Yeah. I'm commenting on things that have happened before, so I hope you'll excuse me. One of the things, I belong to Horsforth Churches Together, and one of the things that we found has worked really well is that we invite all the churches to send representatives to a cafe, and we all sit there, and there are representatives from every church in Horsforth R1, and we show what everybody is doing. So every organisation has the opportunity to show on the chart what they are doing. And then at the end we all sit round in tables and we say, what do we need in Horsforth now? What are we missing? And a discussion occurs after that. And we've had 2 really successful goes at this. And the first one, we set up a community cafe, which is going strong, which has also spurred all sorts of other things that have come off that. And it's also hosted people who've gone on to do the community, the repair cafe. We've got the climate change. All of these things have sort of come out of that. And then the second time we did it, we set up the food bank, which is now a food pantry, and one of the churches has built a building to house the food pantry. But one of the other things that's a knock-on effect is that the churches all do their own thing, but we all contribute, and that is very positive. Now, I'm not saying that everything is covered, because it's not, and we're not particularly good at some things, but that has been a very successful way of going forward. Our latest idea, which is coming into fruition, I hope, is we are going to invite the young people, teenagers, from all the churches to join together. They go to different schools, so this will be quite interesting. We're going to suggest that they might like to take ownership of something at Christmas. Now, in the past we've had carols in the park, but maybe they don't want to do carols in the park. And our thinking is, if we can do it, it's a success. If they actually talk together and think of something else they want to do, it's a success. If they actually do it, and we'll need to support them, that will be a success. The thing that won't be a success is not starting it. So that's my answer to something that somebody else was saying. The other thing was, I work as in volunteer with refugees, and you're probably aware that this government has increased the number of
people who go through the system, which is fantastic because they're not staying as long in the hotel. Some of them were in the hotel for 18 months or longer, which is disgraceful. But because they're going through a lot faster, there isn't accommodation for them. They have, once they get their right to remain, they have 28 days to leave hotel or whatever accommodation they're in and find accommodation and find a job. And for some, that is not long enough. So we have a gap there. Now there is an organisation called Refugees at Home. Now the Home Office, not the Home Office, but the main office is in London. But basically what they do is they are looking for people who are prepared to take in a refugee or a refugee family or whatever. If they have got spare room, if they have got a sofa bed, they come along and they talk to you about what you could offer. And the idea is to match up refugees with a short-term home, and it's greatly needed. It's greatly needed. And if you can spread that, because there will be some people who, and you can say, you might say if you're a woman by herself that I only want a female, or and the only stipulation that Refugees at Home say is that the person coming in must speak some English, because you need a communication between the person offering accommodation and the person who's accepting it. Thank you.
Can I just add to that? I agree from what you were saying about young people getting on board, and I think social action projects are the way forward with that, and I've always been inspired by that. I worked with Peace Jam, which is basically like a charity organisation which basically gets all the young people from primary schools, secondary schools and universities together, and they all agree on one project that they want to work on within the community, and they basically go out in the community and work on that project together. So I think it is something, just a bit of feedback going forwards. I've brought that as well somewhere.
It is definitely a thing with a lot of younger people, my daughter included. I will not name her because I might not survive the experience. But I can talk to my daughter or others in her age group about faith till I am blue in the face. Not terribly interested, because one of the things we'll look at and go, the church does not have a good track record of this, why do we believe it? But if I talk about the engagement with people experiencing poverty, with engaging around environmental issues, or engaging around LGBTQ+ issues, actually they're interested in that. And it's that shared interest in. Because they're interested, they actually start engaging. And I'm not saying do it because you want them to come to church, but do it because this is where actually you start mending some of those relationships that we've broken quite badly in the past.
From underprivileged areas, it would be great if the church could get more involved with youngsters in the community and delivering activities to keep students engaged, and mentor training as well for people delivering those activities, group work and discussions. You can also do this through role play as well, and social action planning, which puts that into perspective, as well as music and stuff, because lots of young people learn through music. And the main workshops you could look at is climate action, poverty, as well as laughter workshops, just to keep the engagement rolling. And you can have lots of food for thought as well as reflection at the end of the sessions.
Thank you. Anybody else not said anything that they feel they want to? Look, we've not heard a lot from you there, but you're at the end of this team now. Do you want to be part of this team?
So my background is kind of technical debt issues and insolvencies. So my worry at the moment is that our demand is increasing at a pace that we can't keep up with, and that's a huge problem. We spoke about that as well. So what we do have is we've got lots of case studies, data, that's useful for things like social justice, social policy. We've worked with people who suffer from this, so that can be shared.
And an amazing team that ranges across advice, ESOL classes, the whole range of whether the